All right, so today's show, side hustle to full time. Such an important topic. There's the idea of quiet quitting, which I talked about in my previous book, Career Remix, where people are not really leaving their jobs, but they're just not doing their jobs. So, as they say in Office Space, the movie that you see in the thumbnail before you clicked on things, it's just enough to not get fired. And a lot of us are in that space. We don't have to be though. We don't have to be in that space. The thing is we're not always sure as far as when to move on to the next thing. At least here in America, and I'd say for a lot of the countries over here, um, Canada as well as Mexico, and a little bit of the Central America and a little bit of South America as well. We're kind of been teetering on a recession for a few years, so it's kind of a rough time to have that discussion about when am I going to leave my job. You also shouldn't be miserable. And so what I'm going to talk about today I'm going to give a few different tools, specifically books that will help you along your way, as well as give some of the practices and exercises that might help you figure out if it's time for you to leave that job that you don't really like. And as I implied, the side hustle to full time also means that you need to have some type of income coming in. And I would not recommend just quitting your main thing. That leads to the first question that I often get as a coach, and I think it's a really important question. Let me take the comments off right here. I feel like it's like blowing up the whole thing. There we go. It's big banner here. When do I know it's time to quit? Such an important question. I think the main thing comes down to two basic ideas. The first thing is the people that you're serving, organization that you're serving, or whatever. Is there a certain cap as far as like limitation as far as you serving them? Like, is it to the point where you're like, I came here to serve these people, this group, this person, and now I can't do that anymore because of the circumstances in the organization, because of the toxic environment, because of the supervisor that I'm working with isn't allowing me to be great, which happens sometimes. Are there certain barriers that are insurmountable when it comes to you actually doing your job? Doing your job and serving the people that you're supposed to serve, to me, are the same thing. So if there are certain blocks, certain things that are immobile, like back to the, we were talking about mountains some more. If there's a mountain in the way and it cannot be moved, that can be that first sign to say, you know what, this isn't going to change. And I'm putting energy into these things, but the people that I'm trying to serve aren't being served. That's a tough place to be. The second reason to quit, as far as, and it's more of a spectrum, is if there's actually another path, another direction that you're supposed to be going that allows you to serve better. So if you're saying this feels like a dead end job, but then you're not sure what that next path is, that's kind of a tough place to be. Because let's say the dead end job is out of the way, then what? It reminds me a lot of being in a bad relationship, or you're dating someone, you realize it's not working out. Sometimes the motive can be, I want to get out of this situation. And sometimes there are awful situations, work wise and particularly personally, where you need to get out of that situation and figure it out later. We're not talking about those. We're talking about situations where you're just very uncomfortable and you realize it's not going to go much further, or it's not the healthiest situation. Not extreme, but just not healthy. When we're focused on leaving the place that we're at, we don't always pay attention to the place that we're going, right? So we can say, you know what, this relationship sucks. This job sucks. I need to get out of here. So then your intention, your focus is on getting out of there. The problem with that is that you don't actually stay focused on where you're supposed to be going. So you're not building up that better situation. And so I'm going to give a few tools today, particularly some books that might help you like map out what that situation is. And I think that's really key. The first book I would recommend is The Dip by Seth Godin, Big fan of Seth Godin. If you've been a fan of the channel, I ride with him. He's fantastic. I've actually gotten some mentorship with him too a few years ago through the marketing seminar. He does work through akimbo.com, I believe, but it's Akimbo. That's the program. He founded it, but now he's not involved anymore because he actually gave it to his employees because he's generous like that. But he has different programs. I actually worked with one of the programs, so I was able to work with him tiny bit one-on-one. What I absolutely love about this book is that actually I have the audiobooks. I do not have the physical. But what I love about this book is that number one, it's short. Like like the audiobook is maybe hour and a half long. Like right. Some of my shows are longer than that. So number one, it's super short if you're pressed for time. Number two, it makes it very clear as far as, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Shout out to the Clash. Am I going to stay or am I going to go? And he talks about, it's articulated so well. He talks about the difference between there being a dip, which means things aren't great, but like a dip, if you stay in it a little bit longer, if you use these particular tools, if you let time do what it's supposed to do, then you'll get out of that dip and you'll actually, almost like a slingshot, go higher. Then there's things called cul-de-sacs. Think about cul-de-sacs, the suburban joints where you drive down the street and it looks like a big circle and there's houses all around the circle and it's a dead end, but the dead end is a circle and it's surrounded by, usually again, suburban houses here in America. Cul-de-sacs are cute. I lived by a couple of them when I was a kid, living in my teenage years in Michigan. Cul-de-sacs are cool. You can ride your bike. It's relatively safe because, stuff's not coming in on stuff. Traffic is light, but you can't go anywhere. You're kind of just there. Like it's a dead end. It's a pretty way, a very French way. I think cul-de-sac is French. A French way of saying this is a dead end, but we're going to gussy it up. So if you have the proverbial golden handcuffs, they call it, where you're given so many different resources, so much money, so much freedom, whatever, that you don't realize that you're handcuffed, right? So you can't leave because often I think they call it a lifestyle creep. There's a great term for it. I'll have to break it down in one of the next videos. But lifestyle creep basically means when you have a certain amount of money coming in or certain resources, and then your lifestyle starts to match it. So you could have a job that brings in $60,000 a year, and suddenly you have one that brings in double, like 120K a year, which sounds fantastic. Yeah, sign me up. That's fantastic. I doubled my income. The problem with that is, number one, you have more taxes. So it's not like you're going to necessarily double your money, particularly if you're in a new bracket. The second part about that is that, wow, well, instead of getting $2,000 every other week, I'm getting $5,000 every other week. So maybe we'll go out to dinner a little bit more. So maybe I need to upgrade my blazer. Maybe I need to get a new car because I can afford it. I'm making twice as much money. And suddenly that money doesn't seem as much. He talks about that in the dip. What you want to figure out, and the dip helps with this, is if you can actually move forward from where you're at now. That's literally the only question. If you can't, then you might need to bide your time until you get the next opportunity, which we'll talk about later on in the show. But other than that, why are you still there? If you know that your time somewhere is limited, that changes your mindset. Your tolerance goes up. You actually have a timeline. Maybe you can set some milestones and be like, you know what? I can do this for a year. Versus saying, I don't have a timeline and this is going to be the next 50 years of my life. It's a totally different energy. I've been in those situations. It's really important to have some type of structure so you know what's happening, Yeah. And yeah, I have not been in the corporate environment that much, but I have some corporate clients. I've heard so many stories. And that's one of the important things as far as being agile and figuring out what you want and then building your career around it versus getting a job and then building your life around that. I talk about that a lot more again in my last book, Career Remix, but you really need to own your career as opposed to just adapting to whatever people decide to give you. People meaning organizations or what have you. I appreciate the comment, but yeah, whew, sounds like a tough situation to be in. On that note, if you're going to read the dip, or if you're thinking about reading the dip, highly recommend it. The links are right below. What I would recommend is sorry, quick technical difficulty here. And so what I would recommend is checking out this Bring Your Worth episode. I want to say from about 2 years ago. Avoid these 3 bad career decisions. I was working on my book Career Remix at the time, so I was deep into this research from um, Harvard Business Review, so HBR and all these other folks, and I was just deep into it. So I think there's a lot of insights in there because I was very much becoming an expert as far as why people leave their job, when it's the bad time to leave their job, and how you can go to a different place without burning all the bridges behind you. I talk about this here. I think it's a really fun episode because there's so many things that I've done that I talk about in there, and things that my clients have done. And it's nothing to be ashamed about. When you're in those kind of situations, it's hard because you want to move on to the next thing. And sometimes the next thing isn't ready. And that's something that we kind of have to accept.